Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So on today's video, we're going to be working on this 2012 Camry right here. We're going to go ahead and replace the brakes on this car, the rotors, the brake pads, and actually do a fluid change today. We'll go through all the steps of that. Stay tuned. So in today's video for the Camry, we're going to be replacing it with brand new OEM rotors right here. Both the front ones, that's the part number right there, and it uses the same one on either side. We'll go ahead and change out the brake pads. These are the brake pads right here. So these pads right here only come with the pads, so you have to reuse the shims and all the hardware. It does come with new spring clips right here, but everything else you have to take off your old OEM ones. If you have aftermarket ones on there, you want to go ahead and buy the shim kit that you're going to need for these two. And then on the rears, the same situation there. These come with the pads only, no shims, so you got to use the shims off the old ones. If you look at the pad themselves, they're made by NBK on the rear right here, and these are also MBKs on the front. The front ones are also stamped with the Toyota emblem right there. And for these, the reason why I went with OEM on everything is because it's not much more expensive than aftermarket, especially when Toyota and everybody has these sales all the time. I got these from Fred Anderson Toyota in Raleigh during one of the 25% off sales they have throughout the year. So I'd rather have the OEM for sure instead of an aftermarket. Same with these. I bought these actually from Bell Lexus during one of their sales, and they're actually the same brake pads used on the ES350. Usually you could look up the part numbers somewhere else on another website and just to see if they have it at a better price or on sale. In addition, for the job, I have some brake quiet right here just in case to put between the shims. And also on this car, it's a little over 10 years old and it's never had brake fluid change. You should change this every 3 to 4 years on there, so we'll go ahead and change it with some Super Tech. Since this is a daily driver, I didn't really care, but if you did care, you could try the Prestone Synthetic, which is what I use on my Lexus vehicles. So on the rear, we're not replacing the rotor, but we're replacing the pad. The pads on here are actually still pretty good, but we're just going to go ahead and replace them since we have it all ready. And if yours are worn down, you want to check it, you could check the window over here to see, or just check the edge right here on the rear. But we'll go ahead and just change that out. For just regular pad changes, you don't need to take apart the whole caliper. You could just take apart this 12mm right up here or 14mm on the bottom here and just swing it up. So you can see the ones we took off still had some life on them, plenty of life compared to this one right here. You can see it's probably got about 20% more life left compared to this. But overall, basically we need to swap this shim off right here onto these new ones on both sides, as well as the wear indicator. So it looks like they don't come with wear indicators from the factory. You have to buy that separately with the shim kit. So we'll go ahead and pop these off of here and put it on. Go ahead, we went ahead and popped the wear indicators off. These will go onto the new ones on the same side, and then go ahead and get the back off. So we look at the part numbers, they're exact same part number right here, the MBKs on the back, all the same markings, Toyota marking. So we'll go ahead and put a little brake quiet right here before we put the new shims on and wash off all those shims right there, clean them up a little bit. All right, got the rears ready to go right here, got the shims on. Make sure you get the wear indicators on the correct way, and I believe these go on the bottom orientation once you put it on the caliper itself. Make sure when you press the piston back in that the rubber seal goes in smoothly and flush, so that way you don't damage it when you put the new pad down, because it's a pretty tight fit when you have brand new pads in here. Tuck it into there, press it down because the spring right here is what holds it. Just slide it in there. On the back side, same way, make sure you get that spring onto there, press down, and just make sure it clips in right there, flush. Everything's compressed and it's in there. Wear indicators on the bottom, and then just roll this thing back down and line everything up, and bolt this thing back out and retorque it. So on the actual front rotors themselves, to take them apart, you actually have to take apart this bolt right here and just take the whole caliper and swing it off to the side. Once you do that, you can get a bolt right here that fits into this spot. That's just a regular 12mm bolt that you use to kind of push this thing loose from the hub if it's stuck. That's pretty much it to take the caliper off and pull the rotor off on the front. Pull the caliper off and then hang it with a hanger or something, or a bungee cord. Okay. Yeah. All right, once we get in here, we'll just go ahead and pop the pads right out of here. We were supposed to actually take the caliper off with the bracket because of the springs. I forgot about this. So when we put it back together, we'll separate the bracket. So taking this off as one piece with the bracket was kind of a bad idea. I should have taken the bracket separately because of that spring that keeps the pad on, and also I need to compress that piston back in. So on the other side, we'll go ahead and do that. So to continue with this, we'll go and use, this is just a 12mm bolt, which is like an M10 1.25. Just go ahead and just turn it until it pops, and then the rotor will pop out. Doing it by hand took a little bit, so I'm going to use the impact driver. There, once you hear that pop, that means they're loose. That's one side loose, so we'll go ahead and do the other side just for sure, so it comes out even. Right, now we're loose. Just take apart the whole rotor. This thing comes off in one piece and we can swap the new one out. And the reason why we're even changing these out, even though this thing's only got 70-something thousand miles and it looks pretty smooth, we were starting to get some vibrations on highway speed, so these things are pretty much warped when that happens. That's why we're replacing these. But generally, if you're not having vibration problems at high speed braking, then the rotor should be fine unless they're really worn down past their minimum thickness. So on this side, we're just going to separate that one side, flip it up, take the pads out, and then compress the piston before we put it back in. So again, the front pads were about half their thickness, so they were not even ready to get replaced yet. But since we were doing new rotors, we went ahead and replaced them. But look at that. This is the new one. That's the old one. Still plenty of life on these. So the replacement pad's exactly the same as the original ones on this car. All the numbers are the same on the back of the pad, as you can see. The replacement ones have this number right here where the factory OEM one didn't, but overall everything is exactly the same as it came from the factory. So we got everything back on, put the disc quiet on between the shim and the pad. Go ahead and get your new springs all ready to go once we put it back on there. Once you put it back on, make sure the orientation of this is on the bottom of the caliper. So I went ahead and put the new rotor back on. One of the things I noticed with OEM rotors is they actually balance them, which you never really find with most aftermarket, especially cheap ones. So this one's balanced. They actually shave a little bit of material off here to balance it when they come out of the factory. So that's one of the quality differences you're gonna see with OEM rotors. So earlier, like I mentioned, this side, I should have put in the bracket on. So since we put this back on, I'll go ahead and bolt the bracket back on, take the caliper off using the other thing, go ahead and compress down the piston so that way we can put the new pads and everything back on. So one of the things you want to do is never fill this thing up unless your pads are all full and your rotors are full. This thing's actually designed to indicate when the pads are low when you get to minimums. So if you fill it up throughout the life of it, you're going to overflow it when you change your brakes. So we're going to have to take some of this out right here. So if you have a clamp, you go ahead and just clamp the piston back down. You could sometimes use the old brake pad to do it, or you just go straight into there, but just turn it slowly to compress it back in there. I forgot to keep an eye on this when we were compressing that thing and it overflowed. Now I have this huge mess right here we had to clean up before it messes anything up with this hydraulic brake fluid. Once we make sure everything's pressed into here and everything's good on top, just clean out whatever's junk's in there. Get the pads all ready. The back pad just goes in. Make sure you basically just get it in here and get these springs right. So on the outside we can see it pretty much. Just put it in as an angle and then it slides right into there. Make sure all the clips are in place. The spring down here is in place. And then on the inside it's going to be the same way. Just put it in, get it past that thing, clipped it in. All right, once we get it done, go ahead and put the springs in there. So the springs go on like that on the top, and then the bottom goes the opposite way. What it does is it spreads the pads apart, so when you're driving normally, it actually spreads the pads apart so it doesn't make contact, but then when you step on it, it's the pistons do the work. So you got to hold it together and then flip it back down right there. And then make sure everything clears, make sure the slide bolt goes through, and then torque everything back to spec. Yeah, you always want to remember that spring because people always forget that, and then they wonder why the brakes make noise or they squeak and make sounds. All right, the torque specs on this bolt right here, that back bolt, the 14 millimeter, for the front is 25 foot-pounds, and then for the back it's 20. So we'll go ahead and just torque these down on both of these since we took them apart. So that's good there. So this one, you gotta hold that right there with the 17 if you wanna spin it. So you wanna hold that and then torque it, so I gotta do it with both hands right there. And then the back one right here is gonna be 79 foot-pounds for that 17 millimeter on the front. So we'll get the bigger one to do that. Since the rear we did the pads only and we only did the lower bolt, go ahead and just put it right onto that one. Good. All right, we got it set to 79. All right, everything's torqued down now. So the next thing we're gonna do is drain the fluid. So we're gonna drain it from the front calipers first, just to get everything out. We're gonna fill up new fluid up here and just watch the clear hose until we can pump out fresh, clear fluid. So back here we have the cover right here. Just remove the cover. This one, put it off to the side. Don't lose these things. You wanna put them back on. That's, I believe, a 10 millimeter. So we'll go ahead and get a 10 millimeter wrench to take care of that. Back here we have this other valve right here. So these are actually 8 millimeters. I thought it was a 10, but the 10 doesn't fit, so I have to get an 8 millimeter. So what we're gonna do first on the front driver's side is just drain all the old fluid out into a bottle, and then once we do that, we'll put the new fluid in and then start bleeding all the corners. All right, we're on the passenger side now. Drain this side. All right, back corner now. Go ahead and do this same one right here. All right, we're in the last corner right here to drain. All right, so now we're gonna go in the same reverse order. So we're gonna go rear passenger, rear driver. We're gonna go rear passenger, rear driver, and then passenger and driver, and just finish the bleed after we drain everything. As you go through, if you don't see any bubbles in the line and everything's nice and clear and amber like the fresh fluid, then you should be good. So we're gonna close this up. Go ahead, bleed this side. Go up front and check the level, fill it up, and then do the fronts. So this is the color of the fluid coming out of here. Go ahead and just dump this, reuse this bottle, but it's almost full, so we want to make sure this bottle doesn't overflow on us while we're bleeding. All right, we're back at the front passenger now. We'll finish this spot and then go to the front driver and finish that up. So the brakes are in. The next thing I'm gonna do is go do some 60 to 0 bed ends for the pads and these rotors. That's when you go 60 miles an hour and then just slam on the brakes and just bed them in. So I did about 10 of these 60 to 0 stops, and the front started smoking and it's smelling because it's burning off all the oils and everything on the calipers and the rotors. Hey guys, thanks for watching all the way to the end of this video on doing the brakes on the Camry. As you can see, it's a pretty straightforward job. I had some help from my dad because it was his car, but pretty much if you could do pads, you could do whatever, you could pretty much do the rotors. When you do the fluid change, you're gonna need a second pair of hands or feet to help you with that one. If you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to your channel, go ahead and subscribe to your channel. Turn on bell notifications to get notified every time I upload a video. For all these different projects, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.